You interviewed me, and the bad thing is you don't even remember.
That's just horrendous, isn't it? That's horrendous.
I did a great interview, to be honest with you. Matt Charlton, CEO of Brothers and Sisters. Thanks for popping in.
No problem.
So what does after work mean to you?
More work. I honestly don't really have great boundaries between work and home life. For me, it's a huge part of my life, and so why wouldn't I want to kind of keep doing it? At some point you need to stop and have a break and watch Love Island, which I'm doing at the moment.
So tell me about the confidence you feel in your 50s as opposed to your 40s.
When I worked at TBWA, I used to work for John Marie Drew, and he had a great phrase which was 100% confident, 0% arrogant. I've always had a sense of confidence around this industry that I've not had in lots of other things. You always taught this phrase was all you've got to do is find the one track you can run fastest on, and you can have an amazing life. And I always struggled with that because there were so many tracks that I struggled to run on, and I always felt I could see everybody running in front of me, and I was either in the middle of the pack or towards the back of the pack. And then when I started running on the advertising track, I suddenly thought, oh, hello. I sort of looked around and discovered that actually for the first time there were some people behind me on it. And there were lots of people who were like way more qualified than me that had gone to Cambridge and all sorts of amazing places, you know, and I'd gone to, you know, a very different route. And I suddenly thought, oh, do you know what, actually, I think maybe they don't know any more than I do. And so my confidence was formed really very quickly.
Do you think your confidence can be mistaken for ego in some moments?
Probably, and that would be a real disappointment for me because that would mean that I've sort of failed because, you know, the moment that people see ego, they stop listening to you, don't they? So, in fact, you're no longer useful as a person in that environment.
Egos used to be crazy high when I started in the industry. Do you think we're slowly but surely flushing them out?
I don't mind a bit of ego. I came into advertising to work with interesting people that want to do interesting things with their lives. And sometimes people with big egos are quite interesting and quite fun to be around. It's also not just about ego, is it? It's almost about like just experience levels. I mean, if you've been in the industry for 20 years and you've done loads and loads of things and you're talking to someone who's been in the industry 5 minutes, you shouldn't be trying to dominate them. You should be trying to kind of help them and educate them and teach them. Yeah, so, you know, that's a completely different thing. And I think if ego gets in the way of teaching people, then that's a massive problem. And I would definitely not advocate that.
So you've been in the industry for over 30 years?
Not quite.
All right, hold on. You've been in the industry for 26 and a half. No, go on.
I started in 1996. Yeah, so what's that, 28 years? Yeah, 28 years.
And you've said you love learning every single day something new in an industry I love, which is amazing, like, because it's a turbulent industry.
Yeah.
Is there not a ceiling? Is there not a moment where you've gotten, like, been there, done that?
I don't think there is really. I mean, there are the odd moment when you think, oh, here we go again. I think predominantly there's just so much new stuff to learn the whole time that I don't think there is any ceiling. I think technology keeps moving the ceiling up. You know, I wish they'd slow down a bit, actually. I mean, I'm always trying to learn new stuff. I mean, God forbid, you know, the era that I've lived through in advertising, there's been so much change. My first job in the industry was standing next to a fax machine, faxing client sign-offs. The best thing about our industry for me is that you never know who's going to ring us up every morning. I mean, every morning I get up and I just don't know. You know, the client that you've always wanted to work for your whole life could ring you up. It genuinely could.
Who is it?
I'm not going to say.
Oh, boo.
No, they did ring me up and it was a disaster, so I'm not talking about it. But they rang me up 2 years ago. I think if you don't like thriving in that world, if you don't like thriving in the world of the unexpected, it's a tough place to be.
You've said that if you hire I type of people, don't be surprised if your teams don't really work.
I just think there's this slightly horrendous trend which is like come into the world. There seems to be more and more people who seem to think that they're like auditioning for an episode of The Apprentice and come in and go, hi, my name's Matt and I'm going to be a billionaire by the time I'm 22 and most people call me the Matinator because I'm so, you know, and you're just like, what, where have you come from? And I always imagined that they like sort of found these people in drama school or somewhere. But increasingly I've been interviewing some of them and they're around, they're real people. But it is a little bit fueled by kind of popular culture that you need to make sure that you get the maximum amount of credit. I mean, look, as an account man, you don't get the credit for everything that you do, right? You know, the number of great ad campaigns that I know account people have had like fundamental input on creatively, you know, come up with a line, come up with the core idea even, you know, and you walk out of the room and you go, that's fine. I'm leaving that in the office for the people that are paid to write this to take, right? That's a gift. You have it. Yeah, I just think avoid the I's and, you know, look for the we's, particularly in account management.
Brothers and sisters, so talk to us about the decision to become a social enterprise, and how have you navigated from kind of profit-driven business to social enterprise?
Yeah. So about 3 years ago, we decided that we were going to make a little bit of a stand, really, and become a social enterprise business. But we just took the decision that we would give away as much as our profit as possible to put into good causes. And the reason we did it, if I'm honest, was because we're really worried about massive issues in the world like climate change and things like that, and worried about what's going to happen to our grandchildren. And Andy and I talked about it a lot and went, how are we going to feel with our grandchildren who are all standing in, up to their ankles in seawater? So really it was just a very small attempt by one very small business to just try and make a point, which was running a business and shareholder value doesn't have to be just about money, that there is another kind of shareholder value. And there's a great quote in advertising, which is never be more than 10 minutes ahead. If you're more than 10 minutes ahead, you're too soon and no one knows what you're talking about. And if you're less than 10 minutes ahead, everyone's a bit bored and goes, I've seen that. And I do feel a bit with the not-for-profit thing, we're probably more than 10 minutes ahead. And that maybe if somebody else was to have a crack at it in, 2 or 3 years' time, or maybe 4 years' time, they might find that they're slap bang on the money and they might actually make a bigger impact. But I think, Will
you keep going?
Yeah, I think so. The other thing that we've discovered is that we can get a lot more value out of money if we turn it into things which are useful. So if just turning up somewhere with a big Terry Wogan cardboard check and go, here's 25 grand, is really not much value to anybody. But if we can take that 25 grand and turn it into £200,000 worth of creative work by bringing in favours or even spending our time bringing in corporate partners for brands, that's really valuable. So it isn't purely just about giving people cash, it's about giving people our time, our connections, our influence and all of those things. And God, lo and behold, you discover as an ad agency, you've got a lot more influence than you realise. A big part of the value that we're really proud of is that we're not just spending our time writing a radio ad, we're spending our time trying to genuinely help build that.
What's your biggest professional mistake?
My God, some of my professional mistakes are so toweringly big that
I'm
I probably don't even want to talk about them.
I know, I'm really keen.
I'll tell you what was a mistake, was going to America when I didn't really want to go.
When was this?
Just after the banking crisis. So I left TBWA, I was MD of TBWA for a year. There was no jobs at all available in London. And I wasn't going to go back and just become a business director. I was like, no, I've worked really, really hard to get to that level. So I'm moving forward, I'm not moving backwards. Moving forward meant going to Amsterdam. So I moved to Amsterdam to run a lovely agency called Modernista over there. Did that for about a year. And I thought, it's time to go home. The guys that owned Modernista in America made me an offer and said, well, we don't want you to go back. We want you to come to America and run the American business. And they made me an amazing offer. It was sort of too good to turn down, really. And so I went over and I kind of commuted backwards and forwards from London for about a year nearly, running this business in Boston, Massachusetts. And it was a massive mistake because I realised a lot of things. I realised just how important my family were to me. Like, why have I got a family if I'm not seeing them apart from every 5 weeks? I realised that I'm not a very adaptable person. I'm not the kind of person that can just move around and live in different countries. Like I actually didn't, I enjoyed it a lot, but I would have preferred to have been in London. If I could rewind the clock and do anything differently, I don't think I would have do that same thing again.
What's the best piece of advice you could give someone about to start their career in advertising?
The bit that I would definitely say I've learned is always having some kind of a strategy in terms of where you think you're going to get to. It's really important to have some kind of a dot on the horizon that you want to try and get to, because it helps you make sense of what's happening to you now, and it helps you not act in the short term, it helps you act in the long term, and it helps you deal with emotions which sometimes can be really painful and really hard, whether that be being overlooked for a promotion. All of those things and other things, they can all happen, right? I mean, it does all happen. Working with human beings is an imperfect scenario. And I think it's so important for people to not get dragged down by those moments and think that those moments are anything other than what they are, which is temporary little challenges on an overall curve that you're trying to get yourself on. There's a lot of learnings out of that stuff as well. And you go, actually, do you know what? I've actually learned something out of that.
We are done.
Are we finished?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
You happy?
Yeah, it was great.
You've said that if you... Damn it.
Okay, so
Please, can you do something? What's it?